All right, you grasshoppers. Welcome to the True Grit Life podcast. And this is a real thrill for me. One of my, I didn't get to play with them a whole lot during my career, but one of my favorite teammates of all time. Was really important to me early in my career when I got started with a lot of great advice. But and to show what a great guy he is, he did not want to make me look bad. He's such a handsome gentleman right now. He purposely has got his screen kind of screwed up there so I look better than he does. He did that just for me. So Cam Connor, how are you doing?
I'm good, and like you're right, Tom. I look at you, you look good looking, and I look like Casper the Ghost at this end. But it's either do it like this or not do it. So we're doing it.
Well, you know, and seriously, I probably did that on purpose, right? I do that to all the guests so that I look better than everybody else. Right? That's what we do things.
That's a good plan. That's a good plan.
So Cam Connor, so you guys know, was a great player. Played with Montreal, New York Rangers, Edmonton Oilers. Who else? Am I missing anybody else?
Well, that's the ones in the National League. Then I got sent to the farm team, and that's why you and I parted ways.
That's right.
As I was given I was at practice one day, and no problem. I just get home. Then I got the phone call. So
right.
Changed my life.
Right. So here we are on the NHL trade deadline, too. Did you ever get traded at the deadline?
Tom, I got traded from the Edmonton Oilers to the from Edmonton Oilers to the New York Rangers when Fred Shero was the coach.
Yeah.
And the trade deadline is at 12 noon. And we were already, as the Oilers, on the road for 2 weeks. And we were in Montreal, going to go on the Forum Ice for practice at noon hour. And I had a bucket of pucks. And I was leaving the dressing room, and then the sports came on at 10 to 12. And as you know, 12 noon is the deadline. So, you know, Gretzky was on the team with us, and Mess was on the team, and Kevin Lowe and Semenko. So as I'm just about to leave the dressing room, they said, oh, the sports came on. So I told everybody, whoa, let's get all the scoops. And the first thing they said was Cam Connor traded for Don Murdoch.
So that's how you found out.
That's it. I heard it on the radio. And so, you know, we didn't have cell phones back in those days. And the Oilers apologized. They said they phoned my hotel room, but I'd already left early for practice because I'm such a keener.
There you go.
And so I know all about getting traded, trade deadline, but I heard it on the radio.
Didn't you have a funny story when you got to New York about Freddie Shero? He didn't know a position you play or something?
You know what? I didn't tell this story for the longest time because it was embarrassing to me. And basically, so that night, I left Montreal, got on an airplane, got to LaGuardia, had our trainers pick me up to the hotel I'm staying at. And our assistant coach, I believe his name was Bulio, his last name.
Yeah. And
so back in those days when you came into your room and there was a message, you had a red light flashing on your telephone.
Yep.
Okay, my light's flashing, so I phoned the front desk. Your assistant coach is in this hotel, and call him. So I call him, and he said, you know what? It's the Rangers team pitcher tomorrow. You'll never figure out how to get into New York City, so let's go together. I said, oh, perfect. So we're driving in, and he says, you know, Freddie's been after you for a long time. He just loves you, the type of game you play, and you're physical, and he's been trying to get you. And I said, well, that's not good, and I'm feeling wanted now. And then he says to me, so what do you play, left or right defense? And all of a sudden, that high I was on, and I come down to a low. I go, wow.
Well, of course, everybody make sure they understand Cam is a left winger, right? So now
I'm a forward. So he said, no, you're joking. I said, no, he almost went in the ditch. He said, well, Freddie thinks you're a defenseman. I said, oh, God. So we get in Madison Square, and we're changing, and Freddie takes me aside, and he whispers to me. He said, Cam, in case the reporters ask you, tell me you can play defense too. So I just wasn't feeling so happy anymore. And it's funny because I got traded for Don Murdoch, and he was a single guy, and all the young ladies loved Murdoch and Ron Duguay. And you cannot believe the hate mail I got from people in New York City saying, what are you doing getting traded for Don Murdoch? I got it bad.
That's funny. So what year was that? What year did you get traded?
That would have been probably 1980 or 81.
Well, I started in 80, 81, and so it's probably like 79, 80 season, okay? Because then the next year, then I came to training camp.
You're right. Sorry, buddy, because that's when I was with the Oilers and I got traded at the trade deadline. So you're right about that. Yes.
So just so you guys know, Cam Connor was a heck of a player, really like smart player, played all the time, but tough as nails, right? I mean, Cam's game was and I don't want to paint the picture just as a tough guy, but right up there with the upper echelon of tough guys in the league at that time, fighting guys like Dave Semenko and everything. And but a real good hockey player too. So, but it's funny you tell the story about Freddie Shore, because obviously I have a real soft spot in my heart for Freddie, because he was the one who gave me my start in the National Hockey League. But that was the way you look back at the way that it's funny telling that story now about him not knowing what position you played. It was such a different game back then, right? There was no, the internet wasn't there and all the other services they have. So,
well, you're right, and Tom. So I kept the story to myself because it's a little embarrassing to me.
Yeah.
And then I did kind of tell a few people, and it worked its way all the way up to Colin Campbell.
Oh.
And so at the time he was, I don't know what his position is now, but he was second in charge of the NHL under Bettman. Right. And then he phones me up one day and he said, "Is it true that you got traded? I was supposed to go." So on the Oilers, it was Cam Connor and Colin Campbell.
Oh.
And so Freddie.
I didn't know that part. That's even better.
He got it mixed. He got the two of us mixed up.
Oh.
And so Colin Campbell had a great after career, and I'm still in the minors.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't realize that part of it. It was supposed to be Colin Campbell. Oh, that's funny.
So I had to verify it to him and said, yeah, it was you who was supposed to. Because, I mean, it just makes sense. Colin Campbell and Cam Connor. And, Freddie, I loved him too, but his nickname was Freddie the Fog. Yeah, totally. So, that all made sense. And So
you were drafted by Montreal then?
I was very fortunate that back in my day, when you get drafted, like today, you're up on the stage and it's very official. I was sitting at home and I got a phone call from my agent. He said, "Okay, you're Montreal's #1 draft choice and #5 in the NHL draft." I never followed hockey. This is almost ignorant to say, but I never followed hockey. I never thought I had the ability to play pro. And I had read when I played junior in Flin Flon in February that I was going to be a first rounder in the NHL and the World Hockey. And I remember phoning my dad up, "Dad, go buy this paper. You won't believe what it said." I had to read it like 5 times. And so they just phone you and say, "Okay, this is what's going on." And that's how you find out.
That's funny. Well, that's the same thing for me. I tell the story a lot where so I was drafted in 1978. It was a 20-year-old draft then. And we lived on a farm, but I was working on a friend's farm. It was a horse farm. So we were cleaning out the stalls with what. And so, again, no cell phones. So the Rangers had drafted me in the 6th round. They called my father at our farm. He called the other farmhouse. They brought me up to the farmhouse, got me on the phone with my father, and he said, "Listen, they just got a call from the Rangers. You've been drafted by the Rangers in the 6th round." I said, "So what do I do now?" He says, "Well, get back out there and finish cleaning this." That was my draft day.
No, that is cute. I like that.
Yeah. But it is funny too, because sometimes you're the same way. Now, especially when I was an agent, it's such a big thing now because the kids are all getting dressed up in the suits. The families are coming from all around the world to beat this draft, and the way we did it was a lot different back then. So you were a first round pick in Montreal.
Yes, that year, the years previous, a year or two before, Flyers had won the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row with a tough, rugged team and the Broad Street Bullies. Yeah. And so, in junior, I was fortunate that when I played the Tier 2, it's called, I was always enthusiastic and I worked hard and I didn't have any fear back in those days, but they only recognized me as a fighter. So when the game got rough, and so for a couple of years, I'd get minimum shifts. And then when I went to Flin Flon, there was something that the coach recognized in me. And he gave me so much confidence. And I've talked about my buddy, Roddy Piper.
I was going to ask you about that.
So we were best friends, and Rod was so positive with me. He always made me feel better than I should have and made me feel I could do a hell of a lot. So bottom line was, though, this guy named me captain of the team. I was a rookie in the Western Hockey League. I'm getting a regular shift. And he would tell us, it's a 9-hour bus ride from Winnipeg to Flin Flon North. Right. So if you reverse it, somebody coming to play Flin Flon, they got a 9-hour bus ride to think about what's going to happen to them when they get to Flin Flon. Right. And we had a tough team. You might know of a guy named Kim Claxon.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Clacker and I were on the same team.
Wow.
And so we, our coach said he doesn't care what the score is after the first period. He said, just run them. I don't care what the score is. So between Clacker and I and a couple other guys, we ran the team. So after 8 games, I had no points, 82 penalty minutes, and a 2-game suspension because I went in the other team's dressing room and beat up a guy. And today you'd end up with life.
Well, yes,
I only got 2 games. So at the end of the year, 62 games, I had 47 goals, 40-something assists, and just under 400 penalty minutes.
That's funny. Uh-huh.
So the Canadians, to get back to what you were saying, they drafted me number 5 in the draft. And they had 5 first-rounders that year. So they said, what we're going to do is make sure we got a good skating, tough team that when the Flyers or the Bruins want to play that way, we've got the manpower to do it. Right. So they drafted after me. Number 7 was Doug Riseborough, and then Mario Tremblay, and then Rick Chartra.
Oh, wow. And
there was only 18 teams back in those days.
Yeah.
So I forget who the 18th pick was. So, Tom, all of us can look back in life and at some time realize you should have turned left instead of right.
Yeah.
My biggest personal mistake was I didn't know it was an honor to be drafted number 1 by Montreal because I never followed hockey.
Right.
And so I went to the World Hockey because they offered me more money.
Right.
And that was a big mistake because I had teams folding on me left and right. And I really just improved my fighting more because it was such a rough friggin' league. I broke my hand 3 times. And anyways.
So you go to the WHA. You ended up playing with Montreal, though, right?
Well, what it was is Phoenix, I signed a 5-year deal, and they folded after a couple of years. I went to Houston Aeros, played with Gordie Howe, and I signed a 7-year, no-cut, no-trade contract. Great team, wonderful guys, and they folded after 2 years. So now 12 years worth of contracts, and after 4 years, I said, I got to get out of this league. So I went to Montreal, and that was really hard to crack the lineup because they had won the Stanley Cup 3 years in a row, and they only lost 1 player, a guy named Murray Wilson. They added Rod Langway, myself, Pat Hughes, and Mark Napier. So we had to fight for 1 position. And Lafleur and these guys have told me, he said, Camp, don't expect to get in the lineup. It'll take you 3 years. That's how it works in Montreal. Wow. So I didn't play much, but I had a good attitude, and I never complained to the sports writers when they'd say, you should be getting more ice time. I just said, I'll go in there when Scotty's ready to put me in. And so.
Good. And so you play with guys like Larry Robinson in LA. He was one of my all-time favorite. I watched him as a player, the big hit against Gary Dornhofer, the Flyers breaking the boards and all that. I tell a story a lot where I ended up playing with Larry in LA at the end of my career too. And what a great guy. But it was early in my career, so probably like my 3rd or 4th year with the Rangers. I was assistant captain. I think Larry was probably an assistant captain there because Bob Gainey was the captain. It was one of the things you were at the Montreal Forum. And I don't know how you were, but like the Montreal Forum, just like Maple Leaf Gardens, right? It was that like historic building. So to be there was just it was this great thing. And there's a penalty called, and so the captains go to center ice to talk to the referee, and so it's myself and Larry Robinson. So I'm standing beside Larry at center ice talking to the referee. I can't remember who it was, and I said something, kind of arguing the play a little bit, and I hear this like it's kind of surreal, right? Like Larry Robinson is standing right beside me, like I had idolized him so much, and I hear this chirping out of my ear. I'm thinking, is Larry Robinson talking to me? Is he chirping me? And I turn and look at him, and the referee's got this kind of smirk on his face. And I turned and looked at Larry, and he's laughing at center ice. Montreal 4, he's laughing at me. And he says, "What do you want, old man?" And I'm thinking, "Old man?" Like,
yeah, really.
So all of a sudden I realized what's going on. I said, "Are you calling me old man?" And he's dying laughing, and the referee's laughing. I'm thinking, this is unbelievable. I'm at center ice of the Montreal Forum, and Larry Robinson and I go back and forth laughing at each other. So he was a classy guy. I don't know what experiences you had.
Yeah. Well, no, the thing is, you couldn't have picked a better person to admire.
Yeah.
Larry Robinson, he grew up on a farm.
Yep.
And he still had those values.
Yeah.
And he treated the way, I guess if I'm to judge somebody, and the way I judge people is anybody can be nice to somebody that can do something for you.
Yeah.
That's not hard to do, and I see it all the time in the 9 to 5 world. And you can see it even in a dressing room.
Yeah.
It's how people treat people that open the door for you. That's their jobs. You don't just walk in, you say, well, thank you, sir. And you make them feel a little bit special. Larry always did that with everybody. Didn't matter what your title was or what you did for a living. He treated you with respect. And how do you not admire a guy like that? So Larry was wonderful. I spent some time with him. We'd go out on a regular basis after the games, our wives and him, and plus 2 or 3 other couples. And again, Larry, I can't say enough about him.
Yeah, totally. And I agree with you what you just said there too. The other thing that really got me about him, and I think I've actually reflected on it more as I've gotten older in life, where he was the kind of guy that is great a player. He was not afraid to make a mistake. And I think I really learned, I'm sure you have too, about like sometimes as a young person, in anything, but in hockey or life or whatever, you don't want to make a mistake. People look bad. But Larry was the kind of guy, like he was famous for coming around the back of his own net and firing the puck right up the middle of the ice for a breakaway, like the Guy Lafleur or something like that. And inevitably, for me to do that, I would have just not played at all. Coaches, Tom, you're not doing it. But Larry Robinson could do it. But what I really respected about him was that even in a place like the Montreal Forum, he would do that. Eventually, if somebody's going to pick it off and go the wrong way and then score a goal against them, and the crowd be booing, but it would not change Larry at all. He had enough strength and confidence in himself that he didn't worry about what everybody else thought. He knew what he was doing was right for the team. He's trying to make a play. He would go back and do it right away again. And I just think he carried himself that way. That's the kind of person and player he was.
Well, he did. And, there's difference, say, between him and I. He had established himself in there as a superstar, as a pillar on defense. And when you know that you've got a solid spot on that team, you can try a little bit more and know there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
With myself, Steve Shutt told me, he was on the team. He said, Cam, Scotty Bowman treats everybody bad. He said, but I got to tell you, he treated you the worst ever I've seen. Oh, what a nice honor that was. He would be on me like the truth. This is a true story. Is after 3 weeks, I can't believe how much he never smiled. He'd be on me. First day of camp, he walks in and he looks at me, goes, his words, is this as big as you are? I'm actually bigger. What do you mean? So he was nasty to me for 3 weeks, but who am I? I wasn't any superstar. I had to prove myself. And after 3 weeks, I had enough. And told Blake, who I believe Bowman pattered himself after. But when told Blake coach, there was only 6 teams. There was no world hockey. There was no alternative. You take it or you quit. Right. Simple. Or you go to the farm team. So I went, told Blake was in the hospital in Montreal. So after practice, I just said, I don't know what to do here. So I went to the hospital. And I found what room he's in, and I walked up. And nobody was in there but Toe and I walked in. So I said, Toe, you don't know me, but my name is Cam Connor. He goes, oh, I know who you are. Yeah, come on in, Cam. So we talked. And I said to him, Toe, I got to ask you. I said, do you have to be a prick to coach? And he said, yeah, absolutely you do, he said. And so, okay. But I still got, so I couldn't try anything more than, my world, I was like, better not make a mistake. Pick up your winger, cover your point. I never went off my wing because then if somebody scored that maybe I was supposed to cover,
right,
then it was even less ice time. And, looking back, and all of us are wiser after the fact.
Oh, yeah.
When I look at my best seasons, I didn't stay on my wing. I went all over the ice, going after that puck, taking bodies, getting involved. And that's my value doing that. Whereas in Montreal, I just stayed on my wing. I didn't do anything extra because I was afraid I wouldn't get back in the lineup. But being afraid I didn't get any extra ice time for sure.
I hear you, and it's hard to say, kind of criticize Scotty Bowman for the great career he had, but I'm with you. Like I see these coaches, like the guys who've gotten themselves in trouble, like the Mike Babcocks or Ken Hitchcocks, that really want to. It's all about their coaching, right? They want to be about them, and I think it just stifles, players' ability to play at their top level. Like you'll never know how good that guy can be if you're just going to make him play a certain way. And I think that's the way in life, whether you're coaching kids or teachers or students or parents or whatever. I mean, yeah, you have to have rules and discipline. There's got to be that team structure that everybody plays within that team structure. But at the same time, let people have an opportunity to see how good, see what they can do, right? If they're really giving their best effort and they try something that just doesn't work out, well, all right, put them back out there again. If they're not giving their best effort, it's a different story. But I'm with you. That's tough.
Well, but also, Tom, I would say the majority of people in life, there's guys on our team like Pierre LaRouche. He scored 50 goals a couple times. He had a lot of confidence, and Bowman would yell at him in practice, and he'd say, okay, I'll try harder, but it didn't bother him at all. And so for me, and probably like yourself and many people that play sports, that I get better and I grow in confidence through positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
And so even if I make a mistake, they would say, Cam, when you were back checking and you went in the corner and you hit that guy and you got the puck, just make sure when you come back you do this. It's how you say it. Whereas Bowman would just yell at me. And so I kind of went into a little bit of a shell, which, again, like yourself, I'm sure that positive today it's changed. Back then, the coaches and the teams had the power. Today, it's swung over. You don't see coaches like that anymore. They got to work with you, right? Or maybe minimum coaches.
And I think what they're seeing, too, is that, like you said, back when Scotty Bowman and Toe Blake were doing that, there really wasn't many options for the players, right? So they just had to take it. I think nowadays, you're right. The coaches are smart, and they realize all that stuff to me, like, again, like I mentioned, the Babcocks and the Hitchcocks and Scotty Bowman, so much of that stuff I thought was kind of for their own pleasure. Like it was more to stroke their own egos, to show that they were the boss, right? And they're going to tell you what to do. I don't really think it was that, like you mentioned. In fact, if anything, it kind of held you back in your development as a player. I don't think it helped the team at all. So, all right. So how long did you stay in Montreal?
So I signed a 5-year contract there, one-way contract. And then the next year, the World Hockey merged with the NHL. Right. And so, we had won the Cup 4 years in a row. And we had a powerhouse team, and you could only protect 15 skaters back then. And I knew with the kind of season I had that I wouldn't be protected. Plus, the guys on our team I could name you guys that you'd say, wow. Like we had
the Hall of Fame lineup, yeah.
Well, there's probably like 8 guys in the Hall of Fame there, and probably more should have got in there. But I was sitting. They had the World Hockey expansion draft, we'll call it. So 4 teams joined the National League. Edmonton had first pick, so they picked me. And the reason is that I played against Glenn Sather in the WHA. He knew me. He saw me, doing what I could do best.
Right.
And he knew that if he put me in a different environment, that maybe he could bring that out of me. So he made me the first choice, and I got to just kind of get off track a little bit.
Go ahead.
So he phones me up after the draft in Montreal, because I'm still there. And he said, so what do we made you number 1, go buy a house. You're going to be there a long time. And as I told you, I heard it on the radio that I got traded. So he said, so what are you doing right now? I said, well, I'm just sitting at home. Why? He goes, well, we got one of the Oiler players that is sitting in a hotel, but he doesn't know anybody. Would you mind giving him a call and take him out for a beer? I said, yeah, sure. What hotel? And he told me, and I said, who am I asking for? He said, Wayne Gretzky. I said, oh, really? And I knew a little bit about him. Okay. Right. I didn't know what we know today about him. Yeah. And so when I left the World Hockey to go to the NHL, he just joined the World Hockey at 17.
Right.
So I go pick up Gretz, and him and I go for beer, and he's talking, and he said, so, Cam, you've played in the World Hockey like myself, and he said, and you played in the NHL, so is it going to be a big step for me? Now, what I didn't realize is when I went to Montreal, I didn't realize you could be the worst team, but you played at a whole different level when you took Montreal on.
Yeah.
And so every game, it was hard work, fast skating pace. And so I said to Wayne, it's a big difference between the two leagues. And I told him, I said, Wayne, I know you've done well in your career, but it's going to take you a couple of years to adjust. And he gave me that quizzical look like, what are you talking about, right? So anyways, that year I played with Wayne, and he scored 137 points right through the NHL scoring lead. So what do I know?
Well, maybe you gave him that boost. Maybe you got to look at the positive way. You showed him he needs to be ready to play. Right?
That's probably it. You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
So how long did you end up being in Edmonton then?
So I was there 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's the problem is, and I don't want to give you my life story, but when I was playing in Montreal, I played all the playoff games, and then I think it was the 6th or 7th game against the Boston Bruins. I got food poisoning in Boston, and I got it pretty bad. So when I got back to Montreal, I phoned up the team doctor, and he said, "You've only got the flu. Just stay in bed and take fluids." Anyways, I was in bed for 9 days, and I had this poison in me, and I had triple vision. Like, it was really bad. And I went from 205 down to 180. And then finally, after 9 days, I showed up in the dressing room. I said, "There's something wrong, guys." So took me in his office and did his test. And he said, "Oh, my mistake. You had food poisoning." So he gave me some medicine, and it helped cure me pretty quick. But in rare instances, as I found out that summer, I couldn't work out. I had a lot of problems physically. Nobody knew why. I had so many orthopedic surgeons I was talking to all over the country. Nobody could figure it out. Everybody had a different night. Well, you got rheumatoid arthritis, or you got one leg shorter than another. And I'd say, "Mom, was I born with one leg shorter than that?" She goes, "No." So we had to rule that out. Bottom line is, I come to Edmonton. I haven't worked out all year, and Sather said, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, "I've been sick." And he said, "Were you like this in Montreal?" When I said, "I was." So said, "You're damaged goods. We're going to have to send you back." I said, "Glenn, I sold a house. I bought one here. Don't." He sent me to this 82-year-old doctor, and the guy said he's only seen one case like it. And because of food poisoning, I had chromosome problems. So he gave me some pills that adjusted whatever is adjusted, and I started feeling great. And I haven't worked out. So the first day at training camp, they'd gone about 2 weeks already. So now I can play. And I haven't skated all summer, and I haven't lifted weights. So I go to get my equipment, and I'm the 60th guy to get equipment. And I got these little kids' shin pads. And I said, "Well, these things don't even fit." They said, "Well, after today's practice, we're going to cut guys and we'll give you." So I said, "Okay." So I go out there. I'm on the ice, like not even a minute. The whistle blows. "Okay, we're having a scrimmage. Cam, your starting lineup." I haven't skated all. I said, "Are you kidding me, man?" And so, okay. So Lee Foglin, who's a pretty strong, sturdy guy, the puck was at his corner. We took a run at each other. Yeah. He knocked me over like a bowling pin, and I went flying into the boards in the fetal position, and I cracked my kneecap right off the bat. I have to hobble off ice, and I started crying. I left that arena. I was heartbroken. I thought my problems were behind me. Yeah. Now, maybe it was the best thing. So I started lifting weights, and I got stronger. My first game back, I got in a fight at Chicago Blackhawks. I think the guy's name was Keith Brown.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to challenge me. I said, okay. And now Chicago's captain was Terry Wiskowski.
Yeah, tough guy.
So I played with Terry in Houston, so he knew what I could do throwing fists. So I square off with this rookie, and as I'm throwing a punch at him, Terry bangs me over. So instead of hitting him, in his jaw or in the face, I hit his helmet. I broke my freaking hand my first game back. So anyways, I was just snake bitten. And so when you get a chance to get rid of somebody that's, has got those injury bugs, that's why I didn't last very long at Edmonton, because Fred Shero made that mistake.
That's funny. Well, that's great stories. Well, listen, guys, we're running out of time here, but we're going to have obviously, we're going to have Cam Connor back on again, because we got a lot of stories like that. Like I said at the top of the show, guys, he's one of my all-time favorite teammates I ever had. We didn't play together that long. The one quick story I will tell, and it was a real good lesson for me. Before my first training camp, the year before my college season ended, I came to play in New Haven. So it gave me a taste of what the NHL was like and what I had to do to be ready for the next year. So I'd worked hard, I'd pumped weights all summer long, and I was jacked up pretty good. And we got to training camp, and because Cam and now telling these stories, I think it makes sense even more. Cam had been around, and we got to be buddies. And he said to me at one point, I think when you were leaving the team, you were kind of saying your goodbyes, and you said to me, "You make sure you stay in shape like you're in shape now," because and I didn't know exactly what you're talking about, because sometimes the tendency is, especially back then, that once the season gets going, you're not lifting weights as much. You think, well, you're tired, you're going to practice and everything. And I didn't do that. And I regret it. And I've always remembered what you said to me. I remember we were right playing that when you said, make sure you stay in shape like you are now. It taught me a good lesson. I eventually, figured that all out, but that was a year. So that was
well,
good.
Tom, thank you very much for the compliment. And I missed you so much when I got sent to the farm team, but
yeah,
that's life, right?
Well, all right. Well, we're going to have you back again, guys. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. We got a lot of good stories. Well, sir, I'll tell stories a few more times. So,
and Tom, I'm going to see if I can get a color photo of myself instead of this Casper the Ghost look.
I like it better because I look better than you do. So I think it's better.
You look better than me anyway. So
yeah. All right. Good seeing you, bud. We'll see you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, Tom.